Alrighty, kids. Welcome to After the Beat. And if you're watching very closely, you may have noticed that we've made a substitution. The magic of television. Gone is Luke Thomas. Here is the Colombian kid himself, Danny Segura. Repping the squad. I like it, Danny.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Jack, look at them guns.
Yeah, 2018 resolution.
Yeah, look at you.
An upgrade right here.
Well done, well done. Well, good to have you here.
Thank you.
Luke had to go do his radio show, so in arrives Danny Segura. Always a pleasure to have him. This is the A+ team. Don't tell Luke you said that. This is the A+ team.
I'll be extra negative.
Yeah, please.
To make
up
I like that you had to tear away pants to get here.
Yeah, you did. You walked in. It was a great scene. So you know what we do here. We answer your questions. You've sent us a bunch of them using the hashtag #TheMMABeat on Twitter. You know the drill, so let us not waste any time. Let us go to our first question of the day and see what's on your mind. What do you got? What do you got? Okay, who should Mike Perry get if he smashes Max Griffin? I'm just going to say if he beats Max Griffin, because smashes, you know, is, it's tough and it's also subjective. Cowboy Magny sound like solid matchmaking. The Darren Till fight would all of a sudden look interesting again too. So as we said on the beat, Mike Perry is back this weekend. He's fighting Max Griffin. This seems like an opportunity to get back on track. He's got a lot of options. What do you want to see him do? If he wins, of course.
Yes. I think the Cowboy and what was the other option? Magny, right? I think those are
Magny or Darren Till still out there, right?
I think those perhaps are a bit too soon for him. We saw in the Ponzinibbio fight, you know, he needed some work. But again, the guy's just 26 years old. He's very new to the game. I would like to see him fight the guy he was originally supposed to fight, Thiago Alves.
Interesting.
Even
Alves getting knocked out.
Yes, I mean, Alves has a huge name. He's a guy that fought George St. Pierre for the welterweight title. He's been around for forever. Having that name in your resume is a big deal. And I understand he's not ranked, but it gives him time to improve. It still tests him because he's going up against an experienced fighter and a guy who presents a lot of problems in the stand-up department. And it's a good name to have in your resume. So I think that gives him some time to improve. And obviously, like Neil Magny and Darren Till fights would be amazing fights too. But I think, you know, it'd be rushing him, and I think this could be a star in the making here. So,
What do you think?
That gives me a little bit of thought. I mean, I saw that question and those names, and I thought, yes, yes, yes. I mean, I'd like to see him fight any one of those guys. I think Danny makes a good point, though. But you know, I guess I'm not going to say that it would be rushing him. I would be happy to see him fight one of those guys. But if the UFC were to say, let's give him a guy, let's give him a little bit more of a building block, I guess Alves would be a guy that could certainly provide that.
Too soon for like Darren Till. I don't like that match. I mean, I liked it kind of before, but after, you know, he's coming off a loss, right? Like it's the Ponzinibbio thing. So it's if he smashes Griffin, like, you know, I would rather see him fight somebody like Cowboy Cerrone.
I feel like that's the one.
Yeah, because, I mean, he came out for 3-11 and just got his win back. For some reason, that's kind of still two ships that possibly passing in the night. You never know. Cowboy's as big of a name, if not bigger, obviously, than these guys, and he's sustained himself that long. But I would be wildly intrigued by that fight. Just thinking of it, I'm like, I'd love to see that matchmaking.
I love the idea of Mike Perry and Darren Till, like the pre-fight stuff. But for the sake of his career and the progression of his career, I think it would be premature. So I agree. I think the Cerrone fight is the fight to make.
Plus, if he beats Till, that doesn't do you any good either. I mean, it would be cool for him, but then you get rid of this guy who's been this monster that represents a market. So I'd rather wait on that one.
Yeah, Cerrone is the way to go. All right, what else do we have? In your opinion, is Bellator hurting the sport by continuing to put on essentially MMA Masters League fights? I'm more than a casual fan, and I don't care to see Chuck, Tito, Randy, etc. fight anymore. So, Jeff, what do you think? Does this hurt the sport, or are they just sort of like fights that are there, and if used correctly, can help build other talent, right?
Well, I think we know why they do it, and you said if used correctly, they've done this before, and yet the numbers that you quoted earlier show that it doesn't seem like it's building the way that they want it to build. Yeah. Personally, this stuff doesn't bother me. I think that certainly when they put on that Kimbo and Dada 5000 fight where somebody almost died inside the cage, that bothered me, and it was also a horribly sloppy, it was just a disaster of a fight. That was horrible. But some of these other sort of Master League fights, they don't really bother me because I'm not that interested in watching them, but their mere existence doesn't bother me, and I don't even care that they're the headliners, because to me, headlining a fight card is all about marketing, and if those are the most marketable names, fine, put them there. It doesn't. I guess I'm kind of neutral on it. They don't bother me. It doesn't. I'm not going to watch them.
It wouldn't bother you if a guy like Chuck Liddell, who was getting brutally knocked out at the end of his career, returns like 7 years later.
Well, that's a whole different. That's a different part of it. This question was really about the philosophy of bringing in these kind of the Masters division.
Yeah.
Yes, when you talk about specific people who have clearly had some concussions in their career, that's a different issue. And those guys I don't want to see in there unless you matchmake them very specifically. Like if you put Chuck Liddell in with Hoist Gracie, or somebody who's not going to knock him out but may choke him out. Yeah. I have a different opinion about that than if you put him in there with a guy who's going to possibly make his make those concussions, whatever the stay over from the concussions, make that worse. So yeah, I guess when you put it that way, you have to be smart about how you bring somebody back in if you're going to have any compassion for the older fighters.
I'm more of a UFC guy, like you're saying. The Machida Belfort fight's going to do it for me. You're talking about. We're talking about. But the bottom line is the reason you can't have a Masters division at all in MMA is because we've watched these guys for how many years? How did they get to this spot? Take beatings.
Yeah.
Get hit in the head. Get hit. There's a reason people didn't want to see Chuck Liddell fight anymore. When a one-handed Franklin knocks him out, and this was the fight was going to tell us, and you see his chin is gone. There's something that makes you, it's a little, cringeworthy. You don't want to see that happen anymore. And obviously, like we've been on record a million times, Dana White was like, hey, I don't want to see him fight anymore. We went through this whole thing. So why now, after a remove, and I don't know how old he is now, in late 40s?
Yeah.
Why we would want to see this fight, even if it's Tito Ortiz, who's gotten older himself and everything. To me, whatever bad blood, it doesn't fester. It doesn't carry over into something like this where you're like, okay, now these are two older guys who've been hit a ton fighting each other. Yeah. There's not a lot of intrigue. I get the names, but to me, I'm like, no, it's not a good look. And I don't really, to be honest, I know we were going to talk about this on the other show, but we never got around to it. But the Machida Belfort one, it's kind of perfect matchmaking because they're both at the tail end. They're not quite to that. But it sort of holds true for those guys too, man. I've seen it. You've just seen them in there for so long. You wonder how much they have left. And on that level alone, you're sort of already like, it's a little weird.
Yeah, it's a gray area. I'm okay with watching, some of the legend fights as long as, they're active fighters. Say Machida Belfort, I'm okay with that. Or, I know there's been talks of Bisping or Rashad, those type of fights. But bringing Chuck, a guy who's been retired for so long, and just the way, his career ended, at least Machida picked up a pretty competitive win, recently. Yeah. That's completely different. Or bringing in a Kem Shamrock who's already in his 50s.
I think we have to acknowledge that this is not a new thing. Certainly not in MMA. Really, in combat sports in general. Before we even went on the air, we were talking just amongst ourselves about when Larry Holmes fought Muhammad Ali. Ali was a shot fighter. Previous to that, when Rocky Marciano fought Joe Louis had been retired for years, but because of tax problems, he needed the payday. So these kinds of things have been happening throughout history of combat sports.
I wouldn't want that image of Chuck Liddell in a 40-some, like just getting in there. You can just sort of imagine how it would look, and you're like, I wouldn't want to see it.
Yeah, I don't want to see it either. All right, what else do we have? Let's go to our next question here. If you guys could play any professional sport, what would you play and why? Also, what team would you want to be on if applicable? Wow. Chuck, why don't you go?
If I could play in any professional sport, basketball, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I look at, growing up, you think, who knows how far you can go in basketball. But now I look at it and like, I could have been the best player in Colorado and I probably wouldn't have made it to the NBA. Sure. You realize how good those guys are. But, I do see kind of, it seems like such a luxury to show, like you show up at the arena, the music's pumping, those guys are just out there doing imagine that lifestyle all the time. Everybody catering to you and, to me, that would be the best professional one. Plus, relative to other sports, the injuries they get are, it's more athletic injuries, planting from the ankles, knees, things like that, rather than head injuries and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved football, but I would not want to be playing that sport. I don't want to be a combat athlete. I don't want to go through that stuff. So you're right, basketball is certainly a good one. Is there such a thing as professional curling though? Because I've been watching it during the Olympics, and
there is.
You can go pro.
Downside, you got to live in like. Yeah.
That I actually think that I think if you gave me now that the Olympics are winding down. Give me like 4 years. I think I can make the U.S. team next time if I really
would love
focus.
nothing more for you to apply yourself to that and see.
I think I could do it.
All right, we'll check in 4 years.
I would do soccer. Yeah.
Probably football or
football. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just checking. Same thing, right?
Yeah, I guess. And I would probably play for Atletico just because it's my favorite team. But I mean, once you're playing professional soccer, once you're a professional soccer, anywhere in Europe is good. Even if you're playing for like, a second division team, you're still well off.
Those crowds.
Would you play in the MLS, or are you that below you?
After I was like maybe like 33.
Right. That's the play.
MLS,
You got to go when you're on the last
or
legs.
you go to China. It seems that everybody's doing that.
Is that true?
Yeah, they're paying a lot of money.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Who did that recently?
Recently, like just from Atletico, Augusto Fernandez, an Argentinian player. I believe he's like 33.
How's the competition there? Is it better than MLS?
I don't know. I don't really watch much Chinese soccer, but they have. I feel like they have more players. I mean, they've been investing a lot and putting a lot of money in and bringing in players. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What about you?
What about you?
Oh, basketball, obviously. Yeah. Basketball.
Really?
Yeah.
You could have made it if you.
Were you surprised by that?
You were close.
Yeah, I was close.
I thought you'd be like I thought you'd want to be batting cleanup for the Expos. That's where I'm.
Basketball.
What if they said we'll bring the Expos back just for you? Then would you go baseball?
That's a weird question. It's like basketball's a favorite sport. I'd love to see the Expos back more than anything, but I was always better at basketball than baseball.
Okay, so you're
actually just last week I was at
the
a batting cage, and it was just it's been so long since it's tough.
Baseball's fun too, though.
It is fun.
But I would go
it is fun. Okay, do we get to see Derrick Lewis versus Francis Ngannou next? Is that it?
Yeah.
I think that's
He
the one
wrote
to make.
soon. I'm going to say next. That's got to be the one, right, Danny?
It's got to be it.
What a
The time is
fight.
now. What?
I said, what a compelling fight that would be.
And this rivalry has been naturally brewing
perfect.
for a few months now. So it's not
Some months. It's been over a year since they've been going back and forth.
We've been criticizing the UFC for just random matchmaking, Tyron Woodley, Nate Diaz, and just sort of picking and choosing whatever. This is a natural rivalry that's been building up, and on top of that, it just seems that both guys, are some good times right now. Ngannou just challenged for the belt. He's bigger than ever at this point. Derrick Lewis just came off a pretty big win as well.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Losses don't hurt as bad in heavyweight division either, especially for young guys, like younger guys. I know they want to, they're not spring chickens.
Also, he just lost to the champ.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to be there. Anything. He needs to work on some things. Obviously, we saw that. But Lewis, I mean, you've got you're expediting him if he gets by Ngannou. You're like, well, suddenly he's the guy. So I feel like there's good upside, and it doesn't. Either guy could lose that fight, and I don't think they lose anything really in the division. So I love it.
1 round.
Yeah.
No, every time we say that, it doesn't go. We
That's
said that about
true.
the title fight.
We did say that.
Yeah.
Well, because every other
You know
fight
what
was always
sucks?
1 round.
Is after it gets by the first round, it loses something too immediately because you're like, if it didn't happen in the first round, you don't know now if the guys are exhausted and everything else.
I mean, look at Derrick Lewis. He got a pretty late knockout, right?
that's true.
That was pretty
That's
exciting.
true.
Fight.
Put that fight on the
some
July
reserves.
7th card.
I'm all about it.
Big Las Vegas card. That fight would be.
That would be awesome.
I mean, it's just and like you said, they've been going at it for over a year now. So it
They've
feels
got
like
to be
build-up for that is
besides.
gonna be a lot of
So you
fun,
have like the guys who are like the names in the division, Overeem and Cain Velasquez. But I feel like those are the two guys with the biggest buzz names who are not in that older group.
Sure,
you know what I
sure.
mean? So it makes sense.
July 7th might be a little soon. Derrick Lewis broke his hand in the fight, so and Ngannou wants to take some
Put
time
some
off.
dirt
but
on it. Let's get this to July 7th.
He would do it. He would definitely do it. Okay, what else do we have? If you guys had to fight in the octagon and could pick any cornerman or woman, who would be your 3 and why? How about that? I thought that was a great question.
That is a good question.
Jeff, why don't you start?
Well, I don't know about 3. I've always, and I know that the Jackson Wink team has been on this, this whole losing thing that people have talked about a lot. But whenever I watch a fight and they show the corner and I see Greg Jackson in there talking to his fighter, I'm always impressed by what he does. He always spends the first 30 seconds of it has nothing to do with strategy. It's always just trying to get his athlete to breathe, to center himself, to relax, and then at some point he'll say a few words and then defer to Wink. And so I would want that guy, because if I could survive the first round, which I'm not sure I'm going to survive the first round against anybody, but if I did, I'd probably be so damn exhausted that I need somebody to get me to breathe and get to relax and to calm down. So
Just go with Greg.
Well,
Maybe
I
just
go
a
with him and then.
one-man corner.
What's that?
Maybe just a one-man corner.
Well, I want to have him, and I'm not sure
Just
who else.
Greg.
You're not sure who else. Okay. Well, I mean, it's been done.
Yeah, I'll have him. Maybe I'm also, well, I'll go with him.
If I'm able to pick, just pick and choose, I'm going to take somebody like.
Go random.
I pick somebody like Matt Serra because I know I've watched him and I think he's a good coach. You know, and you could if he's not available, I'd take Longo. One of those two guys.
Okay.
Maybe Trevor Whitman. I've always thought he's been able to handle his corners very well. Like you listen in, and I feel like he's very human. Like and he knows how to rev up a fighter and kind of get them beyond, stuck out of weird positions and things like that. Just kind of getting them out of whatever, if they're down, kind of out of the whatever funk they're in mentally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that guy. And then a Diaz brother, probably Nick.
Interesting. I like that. I wasn't thinking of that.
Because if anything goes down post-fight, you got backup.
You wanted somebody's going to swing for you.
Yeah. I would choose Trevor Whitman just out of the fact that, we recently saw that video surface with Nate Marquardt where he was like,
exactly.
I know that's a guy who will probably take care of me and throwing this out if I'm getting whooped.
Sure.
Greg Jackson, I really like, that he calms fighters down and, he really slows things down, And I would just throw out there, I can't remember his last name, but Manolo, one of Yo Romero's coach. He trains out of ATT in Miami. They call that Manolo Top Team.
Is he the guy who keeps the stool in the cage so that he gets to get a load? Actually, come to think of it, since I only had one guy in there, I'm also thinking, Greg Jackson's going to calm me down, which is great in my breathing, but I might need somebody else in there to remind me for head movement, because sometimes if I'm fighting, I keep my head one spot. So I need someone to go, head movement. I'm not sure. You have any ideas
That
why
is
I might
important.
be able to
That is important.
Anybody who I can
Nobody
get
comes to mind.
Yeah, somebody.
Was that it?
Yeah,
three?
those three.
Jeff interrupted you while you were...
No, he got a three.
I didn't know you wanted to go four. Championship fight, you could go four.
You got three.
You could go four.
No, I think I'll be fine with it.
You got him as three.
All right.
Come on.
Other ones that I would think of for as a hobby, I think I like the thinkers. I like the thinkers.
Say that,
Like Greg Jackson. And you know who I've been impressed with? He doesn't corner very often, but we saw him in action this past weekend. Uriah Faber is very good in the corner. Yeah. His advice is very good. He was with Sage Northcutt.
The whole team Alpha Male staff is...
Faber in particular, I really like.
You just want somebody who's going to be able to speak to you as a human being. They know you. Like you watch Matt Hume with Demetrius Johnson, guys like that. They just know how to. They know what they're dealing with, man. I mean, there's so many. There's so many.
That's Brown, for example.
I was going to say Mike Brown.
Yeah, Mike Brown.
He's very good. Very good.
Yeah, there's a ton of great ones.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good question.
Good question. It is a good question. All right, what else do we have? There's been a lot of focus on the commentary teams lately. Could you break down the positions in the booth? What is each one supposed to do, and what makes someone good at it? So the reason I chose this question is I am consistently shocked.
I've heard you actually mention this before.
At how MMA fans in particular don't understand the difference between play-by-play and color analysts. For example, we'll say, oh, John Anik is the best in the game. No, I disagree. Rogan is the best. They do completely different jobs.
The same.
The play-by-play guy is the lead guy. He introduces the broadcast. He sets things up. He is the guy. He is your Marv Albert, your Bob Costas, your Pat Summerall, your Al Michaels. He is that guy. He is usually a non-athlete. He is usually just a professional broadcaster. He is the guy who's going to sort of set the table and take you from one place to the other. It gets a little confusing, I think, for fans when Anik is the one doing post-fight interviews, and then we're used to Rogan when he's there doing post-fight. But that's the play-by-play guy. The color analyst is the fighter, is the ex-athlete, is the X's and O's guy. In our case, we also have Joe Rogan as well, but he's he's a martial artist. He's the guy who's going to break down the action for you.
John Madden.
Exactly. The play-by-play guy is the guy telling you what's happening, is painting the picture, but the analyst is breaking it down. Tony Romo in football as of late. It surprises me that fans don't get this. Why do you think this is?
I don't know. I hadn't really noticed it too much until you pointed it out to me one time, and then I saw it like completely. I saw it.
Get it all the time.
Yes, people were comparing one day. I'm like, you realize those are two separate functions, and then we started talking about the third man in the booth. Well, what is that guy's position? Well, somebody like John McCarthy should obviously be talking about rules, things like that. He's going to keep it. He's going to give you a broader sense of what you're looking at, in that sense. But to me, it's pretty black and white. One guy's something's going on. They're kind of describing the action. The other guy comes in and technically tells you what you just watched and what they're setting up. Or what in our sport, Joe Rogan. That's what he does. That's what Jimmy Smith is very good at.
I think a pretty clear difference is one of them reads ads, the other doesn't.
Well,
that's true too.
That's one of the differences.
One of the differences.
Although the UFC doesn't like for their play-by-play guys to speak a lot. They want, like, if you notice Rogan, does a lot of play-by-play within his analysis, which is a little different. But like this individual asked, like, what makes them good at their jobs? Well, for the color analyst, I think, especially in our sport, which is at times complicated for non-practitioners, someone like Jimmy Smith, who we've been talking about lately, does a great job of breaking it down for the layman. And I think that's really important. Like, you can't be too technical and assume that these individuals, you know, who are watching have done this before. Because there's a good chance, like if you're watching a basketball game, there's a good chance you've done it before. But in MMA, there's a very good chance you haven't done it before. So you have to break it down for them in that regard.
I think one of the things that has allowed some fans to sort of mix up the different roles, and it's not so much at MMA. I think the guys who do MMA have been pretty good at this, at keeping their roles separate. But when I watch boxing, Jim Lampley, I think, violates this rule all the time. He does not allow whoever is his analyst to be the analyst. When it was Larry Merchant or whoever it is, he always likes to throw in his own sort of opinions about things, as opposed to just Jim, just tell us who threw the punch, tell us what's happening, let those guys give us the expertise. So I think that sometimes maybe people who are fans of combat sports in general have seen that. I don't think that Anik doesn't do that. You know, Goldberg didn't do that. Still doesn't do it. You know, none of the play-by-play people in UFC or Bellator do that. I think they're pretty good at keeping those roles separate. And I do appreciate, you know, there is a little bit of another gray area when you have a 3-person booth. Well, what are those 2 other people doing? And one of them is like you said, maybe bringing some specialized expertise, like McCarthy being able to really hone in on the rules. Or it's somebody who could just be sort of lighthearted. Like, you know, Daniel Cormier obviously knows a ton about martial arts and can give you technical stuff, but that's not what he does. He just brings kind of a lighthearted, enthusiastic perspective that is different from whoever the other analyst, color analyst is, and that's kind of how those roles define each other.
The other thing is that I think it's important when dealing with good broadcasters is knowing when to not speak. There are times like when you speak, like there are times where you just let the crowd, you know, tell the story. And I often find this in the walkout. The walkout, I just want to hear the music. I want to hear the crowd. I don't want to hear you reading off a piece of paper and telling us like 8 facts about the guy that you wrote down. You know, sometimes it's important. And even we talk about the finish sometimes, like it doesn't need a lot of yelling. You know, the crowd sometimes is more impactful, I think, on television when you're watching. So it's a tough job, and we've talked about it. It's a tough job in this sport because they're talking for 7 hours and they have to peak at the end of those 7 hours. But hopefully we've broken it down once and for all, the difference between the two jobs. I doubt it. I doubt it.
Not a chance.
Okay, do you believe that the UFC should change round structure, meaning more rounds with 3-minute rounds? Haven't heard this one in a while. What do you guys think? Do you like the 3 5-minute rounds, or would you prefer, say, what would 15? So 5 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I don't
It's
really.
interesting though, right?
Yeah, it's kind of something to think about, but I mean, honestly, like, it's not the round length. It's more the scoring system, as we talked on last week a little bit.
But perhaps if the rounds were shorter,
maybe
it's less to look at.
Well, that might be an interesting. If you looked at it from that angle of just the scoring, would that simplify scoring in some weird way? I guess you'd have to see some.
A lot more happens in 5 minutes.
That's true. Right? Just having go for it. Just having more rounds is a bigger sample size to get. I mean, not usually, but to get a more accurate decision, I guess.
That's true as well.
The only reason
that would
I
be
would
something
want
to consider.
The only reason I would want to see something like that happen would be if I thought that fights were deteriorating in their 4th and 5th minutes of their rounds, and I don't really see that. I don't see fights where the 3 minutes are up and now these guys are basically like dragging. What, if anything, if they were going to change something from that perspective and said we want these fights to be more action-packed, like some of these fighters, like particularly some of the heavyweights. Give them 2 minutes between rounds, like more recovery time or something, so they can come out fresher. But that would kind of change the way the sport is structured. I mean, part of it is you have to be able to recover in that little bit of time, and part of it is being able to sustain your attack for a full 5 minutes.
It's also just, I mean, certain things take time to set up in MMA, which in boxing, I mean, it's back and forth action. But there are certain things that require. I mean,
I would
if
like
you're
to
a
see
jiu-jitsu
it.
player,
I would like to see it.
And also sometimes like just even like fighting, putting up somebody against the cage, that can take up a whole minute just before they get broken apart. That's a third of the round.
I would love to see it kind of toyed with.
Yeah.
You know, just one event.
Anything like that, I would
Because
watch.
I wonder if
just
there'll
to
be
see.
more of a sense of urgency. I'm just curious to see what the game plan would be now that you're dealing with 3 minutes. As you said, it changes a lot. I'm just curious to see what it would be like. I think that would be
I
interesting.
wish we could see more open scoring experimentation too, just because I just would like to know if
But then would guys play it
you're
safe if you're...
Well, that's always the backside, but I feel like because playing it safe versus a guy who's desperate though, a guy who now knows he has to do something crazy, so he's going to force action. You know, I just want to know, like psychologically, how that would work if guys knew the score.
I would love to see just one time, 5 3-minute rounds.
That would be interesting. I've never contemplated that.
Me neither.
Yeah.
So that would be.
And then for a title fight, you'd have 7 3-minute rounds, something like that. All right, or maybe 8, closer to 25 minutes. All right, just a couple left. UFC has held events around the world, but there's still a ton of countries that haven't had a UFC. Which new country would you like to see the UFC go to next?
Paris. I mean, I like France. Just go to France because, first of all, obviously there's a couple fighters from there now, but it has been traditionally illegal. You know, and they have. I know you're going. It's kind of political. You know, the whole structure. But to me, that's like a big port that they haven't hit, and I feel like a lot of Europe would be behind that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first one that came to mind as well. I mean, for me, I know that there's been some. I know they're talking about Russia.
Yeah. Russia's an obvious
which is
one.
obviously a big
gigantic
one. But I guess, you know, I'm going to talk selfishly, and if I get a chance to travel to some fights, I want to go to Paris.
Yeah. I think Russia would be pretty cool with the World Cup coming up. I mean, that'd be huge. I'd like for them to go to South America. I think there's some rumors already out there that they might go to Chile in May. So yeah, if that happens, you know, that'd be pretty big. I think right now there's a lot of Latin America talent that could fill up that card. So yeah, I would like to see them take a trip down to South America.
I think, to me, Russia is the biggest
that
one.
is the big one.
Because of Khabib and some of the other fighters that they have. The other one is, you know, somewhere in Africa.
I was gonna say South Africa, they were dangling that at one point. Remember they were talking about that?
Especially these
it was
days
very
with
compelling.
Usman and Ngannou.
Ngannou and Israel, I know he's originally from
Adesanya, and
Nigeria.
Al Hassan. I mean, there's a few guys. So those were the two. But I think Russia is the one that they're really, as far as like, I mean, Chile is another one, but like a big market that can really make a difference that they haven't tapped into.
Russia,
that seems to be the one. Imagine an event, you know,
Hawaii.
headline.
That's its own country.
Hawaii,
That's right. Yeah, well, Medeiros didn't get the flag. Okay, what else? If you could participate in any Winter Olympic sport, what would you choose? Jeff has it.
I already said curling, I guess, but since I've already
Have you
used
ever
that,
curled?
No, I haven't, but I played bocce and that's basically
not quite the same.
it's basically
it's a lot
similar.
tougher because you got to go the full length.
I can, and I
Bocce's
also
just
have.
throwing.
I've played bocce and I have swept floors. So I feel like if I combine those two skills,
It's a little closer to shuffleboard.
Okay, and I've
done that as well.
I've done that.
Like
I'm not old enough to play shuffleboard.
Yeah.
How heavy is that big disc thing?
They're pretty heavy. I mean, you're on ice, so you glide with it. I did it in 2010 at the Olympics, and
I saw a video.
it's tough. It is tough.
You ever been up to Minnesota? Like, I've been up there for multiple reasons, but there's whole rinks where they're playing that, and I would just sit there watching them. Like, and I mean, people of all ages, and just it's like a bowling alley up there.
It's gigantic in Canada on TV
and
all year round.
And I have no doubt that being serious, that it is really not an easy thing. It looks so easy. All they're doing is sliding the damn thing and sweeping, but to see those guys with the accuracy, it's like sort of like watching bowling. And I think these guys are like it's strike after strike after strike. Yeah. And then I go to the bowling alley and I'm like gutter ball and getting a 3 or something. So yeah, it's a great thing. But
the luge or the bobsled? Which one's the?
Well, the bobsled is multiple people.
Right.
The luge is
one.
Single.
And then the skeleton is head first. That's like suicide.
Those two, man, I don't know how they do it. Luge and skeleton.
It looks scary, but it looks fun,
it is
man.
absolutely insane. There's no way. Back in 2010, someone died on the first day doing a practice. Someone from Georgia, the country of Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. What about you?
Curling looks fun, but I'll try.
I just want to play it safe.
Yeah. I'll try snowboarding. Why not?
Snowboarding. Are you a fan of the half pipe?
I mean, I've tried it. I haven't tried snowboarding. No.
Okay.
I haven't even tried snowboarding, but I've tried skiing.
You've done half pipe?
No, I said he's tried a pipe.
Oh, okay.
The whole pipe. That's the Summer Olympics.
So yeah, I don't know. Snowboarding would be fun.
Okay.
The half pipe.
What about you?
I mean, I would probably. I like the luge and that stuff.
Really?
I agree. It would be a little, but to learn it and
bobsled would be better because at least there's 2 other people.
Yeah. I think those would be fun.
I think we
there
could
used to
do
be
it.
something called ballet skiing.
There was?
Yeah.
Ballet
like way
skiing?
back, like
Really?
late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
In the Olympics?
Yeah.
It was like ice dancing on
Actually, I
skis?
don't know if it was. So it was in the. It was an Olympic
Yeah.
something consideration.
You know, they're considering bringing snow volleyball. So it's like beach volleyball 2-on-2,
Weird.
but more clothes and on the snow.
What's the point then?
Yeah.
That's a good. Yeah.
I'm really disappointed in
guess
the
just to
Olympics
keep volleyball
this
year-round.
year because I feel like I just can't get it because with the time difference. I feel like it's
I know.
just
I've seen very little of it.
Yeah. I
But
don't
it's
know
just
why.
because of that. Like,
What's
there's
your
a lot of
sport though? What are you going to be?
Hockey.
that's no fun. Hockey's no fun. I'm blown away by the half pipe. Like Chloe Kim, what she did,
Yeah.
17, doing that.
The half pipe snowboarders
Yeah.
were pretty awesome. And then last night I was watching a little of the half pipe skiers, and they were falling like crazy.
Was half pipe ski?
Yeah, well, I don't know if they call it, I'm not sure what they call it, but it's guys on skis in the half pipe, and they were falling, and I saw two guys like fall on their head like pretty badly. So apparently the skiing is a little harder than the snowboarders.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, good stuff. Okay, last one. Here we go. What's the future of MMA media with all the cutbacks and layoffs at the moment? So I wanted to end on a positive note.
Wow, thanks a lot for making us.
Oh man.
Are we concerned about the future of MMA media? I mean, where else but here should we discuss something
Well, I
like
mean,
this?
it's always there, right? I mean, the bottom line is this sport is new enough. You know, and even in other sports at this point, the climate's changed, and the way the different platforms change, what people are content, what they're consuming, everything's always in flux. But when you have a newer sport that we're not sure if it's already hit a peak or if there's another peak behind it, you're never sure where it's at. Well, yeah, it's always weird. I feel like it's healthy still, and but it got its healthiest obviously when you had a couple stars in the game. Like I felt like so much MMA media. There was so much going on when and brought so much more media to it. It felt very secure for a little while there because Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey and John Jones and all these guys, and you think like, who else is going to be uncovered? And the events were all big. It felt like there was, the media rows where you could barely move in the media rows because there were so many rows and things like that. It felt very secure. I would say that it's not like that right now, but I don't really feel there's not that many outlets. I would say that that's the biggest one, right? Like if you're not, I'm at MMA Fighting, I do some stuff for the ring, but MMA Fighting is my job really. If it's not there, I don't know where you'd be. I don't even know, so.
Yeah, there aren't that many options.
Yeah, I mean, this sport is a niche sport, and the media that covers it generally comes from that perspective, as has been a smaller media outlets that have become bigger. I mean, obviously this outlet, Vox, I know just had layoffs. We shout out to the guys who've worked on this program with us, who no longer are here. But a lot of these outlets that have been smaller that have gotten bigger, there's kind of like a ceiling to it because of where the sport is at. But look, the sports world in general. I mean, I also, when I'm not doing this stuff, I also work at ESPN, and we had massive layoffs, and a lot of it had to do with people who are covering sports that are much bigger, higher profile than in mixed martial arts, and they're not immune to it either. So it's not really an MMA thing. It's something that's really happening in this whole media climate in general. People are just not. Companies are trying to find ways in which to monetize things that they don't always know. They don't always know where that next dollar is going to be.
That each person is doing a job that people see that they're doing, and they understand that that's what they do well. Like you understand where everybody's talents are. So when you hear things like pivot to video, and you see things happen in Fox and things like that, it always occurs to you like it doesn't matter what I write. I could write anything, and it just. At some point, they could say, the written word is just not what we're looking for anymore. That's more like that. I would say my bigger concern is that things like the written word just become outdated. Like there's just an idea up top that says, we don't really need that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything you
I mean, you guys probably obviously have a better perspective just because you guys have been around the game for much longer. But I mean, I think I remain optimistic. We've described the sport as a boom and bust. So it might be going through a rough patch right now, but I think people will come along, and as long as there's eyes watching, people want to know about these athletes. They want to know the stories behind it. Something that's interesting. Yeah, there's not many just purely MMA outlets out there. I think mainly what's going to happen is MMA drives a lot of traffic, and there's a lot of newspapers and perhaps other media outlets that are not just MMA that haven't really caught on to it, and now they're starting to realize, wow. MMA does draw traffic, so now they're assigning people to cover that beat, and so I think there's room to grow there, but I remain optimistic. I think in the coming years it'll.
I don't feel like we've seen everything in the sport. That's what I feel good about. I remember there's been a couple of times where there's been some alarm bells going off and people start to worry, and then something happens and we're right back into the thick of it again. I kind of feel like MMA has not coughed up all of its charms. In fact, I feel like there's still a lot that we don't even understand yet, like that will happen. That could be optimism, but I also feel like that's just the sport has kind of done that. It's been resilient in its time, and it does keep coming up with new angles. It keeps coming up with new stars and everything else. So I guess I'm optimistic. Ultimately, it's going to continue on that trend, and we'll be doing this for many years to come. Yeah,
it is a fascinating question. It's one that I certainly think about all the time, just the state of MMA media and job security and whatnot. The real reason, though, that I picked that question was because of something you alluded to. A lot of people may have heard that yesterday there were layoffs at this company. 50 people were let go, and a lot of people who worked on this program in particular were let go. Adam, Shai, Seamus, Pedro, who we were huge fans of here, along with everyone else that worked here, Dave, and I may be forgetting a few names, but I wanted to say thank you to them for everything that they did on this program, and wanted to say thank you to everyone who has helped this show along the way, who is no longer working on it, because we definitely miss them, and we're definitely very, very sad to hear that they were no longer at the company. It's always a tough thing to deal with, but wanted to give them a shout out and let them know that we have not forgotten them and definitely appreciated everything that they did for us over the years. All right, on that note, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate your time. Thanks for sticking with us, whether it was on the beat itself or after the beat. We're back next week with a brand new episode, so stay tuned for that. For Danny, for Jeff, for Chuck, for Ariel, for the rest of the crew, have a great weekend. Enjoy the fights. We'll see you next week.